How many discounts does USAA Auto Insurance offer? Too many to say here. Multi-vehicle discount, safe driver discount, new vehicle discount, storage discount, legacy.
How many discounts will you stack up? Tap the banner or visit USAA.com/auto discounts. Restrictions apply.
This episode is brought to you by Stouffer's. Here comes three-time juggling champion Natalia Rogers. She's juggling law school, her TA job. Oh, narrowly catches the laundry. What's that fourth ball? Parents unexpectedly showed up at dinner time? Is that too much for Natalia? Not with Stouffer's Chicken Alfredo and its mouth-watering mix of Asiago, Romano, and Parmesan. When you're juggling four things at once and the clock strikes dinner, think Stouffer's.
Welcome back to Speaking with Confidence. The podcast helps you build the soft skills that lead to real results. Communication, storytelling, public speaking, and showing up with confidence in every conversation that counts. I'm Tim Newman, a recovering college professor turned communication coach, and I'm thrilled to guide you on your journey to becoming a powerful communicator. Today's guest is Walter Dusseldorp. Walter is also known as the Dutch Mentor. In just 15 minutes per day, you too can be the leader you wish you had under the leader your team thrives under. Walter, welcome to the show. I'm excited to talk to you today.
Good morning, Tim. Same here. It is always good to speak with a professional and a recovering professor.
Yes, exactly. And it gets better every day. But you've got a very interesting hobby. You're a pilot. Helicopter pilots are also pilots, but I look at them a little bit differently. How'd you get into that? Because to me, it's just fascinating.
Yeah, it's so interesting. So it is a hobby today that I'm trying to make into a profession as I enter into the later parts of my career. And we're going to talk about transitions later. But I really caught the bug living in Holland. Every Tuesday and Thursday in Holland, living in my village, the dogfighting of the NATO forces would take place. I would hear these screaming F-16s overhead. And I always was thrilled by that. I really was attracted to that. And it never left me. I always had that little bug. It wasn't until 2001, after 9/11 happened, to which I responded as a paramedic. It was really a life-altering moment for me, saying, listen, we don't know what's going to come next. And if we have a dream to live, we better live that today. So that made I made the decision, listen, I cannot wait. I need to become a pilot because you never know when that comes. So that's when I started my journey as becoming a fixed-wing pilot. And then I actually did a stint as a flight paramedic where I really fell in love with helicopters. And the interesting part is that every single one of the flights, and I probably did about 500 missions, every single one of them, I felt like, man, there is a million parts spinning here, and they're just waiting to fall apart. It's like you're flying an airplane and a helicopter is very different. But I was very interested. And then actually, because of circumstances and having kids and college tuitions, I could not fly for a while other than second seat. And it wasn't until, 4 years ago when I really dove back into the deep end. And I currently have my CFII for helicopter and pursuing my CFII for a fixed wing pilot, and we'll finish that up in March of next year. So I want to go forward as being part of what I do now is life coaching, leading, teaching emerging leaders, but also teach the next generation of aviators so I can connect what I experienced in childhood and bring that same level of enthusiasm and insight to the next generation.
AI is incredible. It can teach you how to fry an egg and even write a poem, pirate style. Yarr! But it knows nothing about your work. Slackbot is different. It doesn't just know the facts. It knows your schedule. It can turn a brainstorm into a brief. And it doesn't need to be taught. Because Slackbot isn't just another AI. It's AI that knows your work as well as you do. Visit slack.com/meet Slackbot to learn more.
It is really fascinating. Which do you like better, the fixed wing or helicopter?
Well, for me, it is easy to say. If I want to go distance, I take an airplane every day of the week. If I want to sightsee and I want to fly low, the helicopter cannot be beat. And I just said this, I flew over Hilton Head and all of the islands for about an hour last week. Listen, the 360 view, being 200-300 feet off the ground, over the ocean, following the rivers and watching the people, the places, the things. You cannot beat that. The helicopter is by far the superior, to the airplane itself. But if I have to sit in an aircraft for 2 hours, go from point A to point B, I'll take that airplane.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. I spent some time in the military as I was in the 82nd Airborne. I like being in the helicopter, but I got a little bit more nauseous in the helicopter than I did in the plane. Just some of the things that you can do, and but it was, again, like you said, some of the views and some of the things that you can actually do with the helicopter. It really is amazing. Let's get into this, because again, you've had a fascinating career, and whether it's from the healthcare leadership, executive coaching, what have you, but what led you from the more of the technical operational roles into mentoring and communication coaching?
Yeah, so an interesting journey indeed. I started off as being an aspirational physician. That was my childhood dream.
Okay.
But I got derailed because of my own behaviors, and then a transition, leaving Holland to go into and moved here to the United States. Not quite sure what I wanted to do. I needed to find myself first. And long story short, I met the right people, and they helped me set up, initially owning a bakery, delicatessen pizzeria by the time I was 19 years old. And then shortly after that, I fell in love with medicine, but in a different form, not as a doctor, but as a paramedic in a very small community in upstate New York. And that really kind of set me on a trajectory. So listen, I cannot be a doctor today, not because I wasn't smart enough, because I just didn't have the pathway and the support systems. I did not know how.
Mm-hmm.
And I have no regrets of that, of course. But I did pursue my paramedic degree. And from that, I sold the store, focused 100% on providing for my family as a paramedic. And over time, I saw so many people around me struggling through poor leadership. And I had this innate natural ability to rally the troops, to bring people together, and to be able to lead through context and not control. There were so many authoritarians and command and control type people in the industry. And I said, listen, there's a better way of doing it. And I was lucky enough to have a really, great first mentor who gave me an opportunity to become a supervisor of a group of 10, 12 guys and girls. And that's how I got started. Now, fast forward as I continue to, climb the career ladder, my passion shifted from wanting to be the senior executive in charge to really kind of like bring my vision alive, to recognizing that the middle manager, that emerging leader who goes from a technical skill into a leadership role, often gets stuck doing and not really leading. And that's what I call the valley of despair. And that's where, I try to focus most of my time, is helping people transition from doctor, nurse, technician, frontline, high performer to becoming a really highly effective leader. And a lot of it is in behavior. And of course, communication is a key part of that.
Yeah, and it's a completely different skill set, especially from the perspective that you came from, being a paramedic. A lot of times, you're called to emergency situations, and you have to act, and there's protocol, and you have to do it this way, because you're dealing a lot of times with life and death, or life and limb, or emergency situations. So, at times that authoritarian attitude is what has to happen to get things done. But more from a leadership perspective, that's a completely different mindset shift, completely different skill set. And it just like, in a bunch of other careers, nobody's ever taught those things. It's just expected because you were good at this. Okay, so now we're moving you on. So how did you said you had some of that innate ability, which is good, but how did you end up developing into the excellent skill set that you have now?
Well, growth mindset is the key to success in my mind. So meaning that you never really stop learning and developing. Even today, as a coach and mentor, I don't run a large company anymore, but I still need to lead myself. And to do this effectively, I need to continue to grow. So early on, I did a lot of reading. Early on, I recognized I needed to go back to school and get my bachelor's and my master's and become a fellow of the American College of Healthcare Executives, belong to professional associations, become a master at networking and building relationships, making sure that, I had regular check-ins with the people around me so I didn't get stuck in my reality, but really deeply understood how people looked at me, right? And that's really what matters on the end of the day. So it is the continuous working on self. And then the most important thing is by being vulnerable and asking others for help. And again, that's where I see the biggest shortfall today. And there's an interesting statistic. 95% of executive leaders understand the value of leadership development of people.
Mm-hmm.
Only 5% of those take meaningful action. So, and how do we know this? Well, simply go look in organizations, healthcare and non-healthcare. Doesn't make a difference. They all have a executive leadership development program where they enroll the top 10, 15, 20 people. But what the other 1,000 middle managers who lead thousands of frontline staff members, all they get is maybe a PowerPoint presentation, a lecture twice a year, or be sent to a conference. But the problem is that nothing is really learned there. It's a good social work connected. But on the end of the day, by Monday morning, they have long forgotten everything. Yeah. So circling back to that, each person needs to take responsibility for their own career and their own development. That's the key. You cannot wait for others to do it. Number two, you have to be vulnerable and seek mentorship, either paid, like hiring a person like myself or yourself, or look at peers in the industry who are willing to spend the time with you. And I'm not talking about once every quarter for an hour. I'm talking about 30 minutes per week. Put yourself on an individual development plan and really set with a growth mindset key performance metrics and key milestones. And through action, you can take one step closer to your ultimate dream.
You know, you said a couple of things that really resonate with me. Number one is continuous learning. That's something that, you know, if you take a cross section of successful people, that's something that they say they do every day. It's not something they do once a week or once a month, like you said. It's an everyday thing, and you know, I harp on this a lot. You know, I call myself a recovering college professor, and I remember having conversations with students and trying to get them to read. And they say, well, what do you read? I said, well, I spend, whether you realize it or not, I spend almost my entire day reading, whether it's reading your papers or this, that, or the other thing. But I also spend some other time reading, whether it's professional journals, whether it's, you know, leadership content, whatever it is to get a little bit better. So if I only have 15 minutes on Thursday to read, I'm going to read 15 minutes, but at least I'm doing something. I'm taking those steps. And that's something, especially from my perspective, what younger generations and younger professionals struggle with to grasp and to start making it a habit.
Yeah, I look at it this way. I have a simple equation for this. Performance equals the function of a technical skill multiplied by a behavioral capacity. That's self. Well, listen, everybody knows how to read. Everybody knows how to open up a newspaper or a magazine or join a professional association or go online or make a post or read a post or comment on a post. The thing is, it is our behavior that holds us back. And it's clear for me, right? I always say this. December 31st, I'm going to make this promise. I am going to go to the gym this year. I'm going to get in shape. I'm going to go out and buy that membership. You buy the membership. You go 3 times the first week, twice the second week, 1 time the third week, and you go back 4 more times for the rest of the year. It is, you know, and you know, we are the worst as humans in following through on the things we say. Precisely the reason why 70 to 80% of the things we say we're going to do either are never done or rarely done to the fullest extent. The word sustainment of an improvement is really, really difficult. We rather lower our standards to say that we have met a goal than actually meeting a goal. And as long as we behave as such, we cannot reach the top of our professions or our big dreams. Listen, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Warren Buffett, you know, you go down the list. All of them are who they are today because they were relentless in their growth mindset. When they failed, they picked their stuff up and got back on the horse. You know, they were just committed and focused on what needed to be done. That's what each person needs. If you want to become the best version of yourself, if you want to reach your dreams, it takes true technical skills, but even more important, your behavior to carry you all the way to your big dream.
Yeah. John Maxwell says that people tell him all the time that they want to do what he does. And then he says, but are you willing to do what I did?
That's exactly right.
That's the key. Yeah, everybody wants to be here, but are you willing to do the things it takes
Yeah.
to get there? And that's where things really start to separate. But again, it takes commitment and action to get to that level. And the other really good thing that I like what you said was the growth mindset. And I use abundance and growth. You know, it's kind of the same thing. You know, if you don't have that, then it's always about me doing this. If you know, if I let you do this, or if I give you this, that means there's less for me. But if you look at it from that different perspective, from that growth and abundance mindset, you know, there's plenty for everybody. You know, if I'm doing this, it builds for everybody, and that's really what leaders have to do.
Yeah, leaders who are inward only will limit themselves, right?
Yeah.
You run out of space at some point in time. Leaders who really are truly self-aware of their strengths, their weaknesses, they're differentiating their level of EQ, their willingness to promote others, who are outward in their actions. You know, the sky is the limit. Right? But it requires focused attention, deep self-accountability, and a true commitment to get there. And it cannot be done, oh, I feel like it today, but I don't feel like it tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah. And you got to feel like it every day. And I go back to John Maxwell here for a second. One of the things he talks about that he does every day, he says, is he journals every day. And then somebody will say, well, what do you mean by every day? He means like every day. Like I journal every day. And that's the other thing. You've got to actually do those types of things. But let's talk about branding here a little bit. You're known as the Dutch mentor. And when we first talked, I told you I love that that name and that brand. How did that identity come about, and what does it really represent for you personally and professionally?
Sure. I mean, and whenever you open up a business, you always have to come up with a slick name that people can remember.
Yeah.
And it's easy enough and not too many letters. So, well, listen, I was born and raised in Holland. So I wanted to have a connection to Dutch people and Dutch culture and behavior. So we are well known worldwide for being engineers and very pragmatic, honest and straightforward people. Right? We are really preserving a work-life balance. Right? We don't believe in working more than 32 to 40 hours a week. We're hyper-focused and accomplish a lot in a very growth, continuous improvement mindset. So I wanted to carry that forward. So the Dutch mentor, obviously my identity and cultural background is being Dutch. And then the word mentor is different from being a coach. So I have been coached. I have coached others, but that is more strategic. It's more in deep listening and providing some pointers and recommending a book or to help people, plan for the next year. But mentoring is different. Mentoring is really speaking from deep personal experience. I've been there, done that. I failed many a times. I got up, I succeeded, and now I'm willing to share my story to maybe prevent you from having the same pitfalls, or at least understand there will be pitfalls. But now you can recover from that if you use this particular structure, which I refer to as our Pure Leadership Power Program. And that's the way I put the words together of the Dutch mentor.
Again, you're spot on with those types of things. And again, I like how you tie things together, and it builds that brand so that it's personalized. It's embodiment of everything that you're trying to do. You've compared personal branding like what you're doing with like Nike or Baskin Robbins, something that must be consistent, but it's also fragile because
yes,
one small thing that is not on brand can tear everything down. So what's the biggest misconception that people have about personal branding?
Yeah, so I think that people don't understand how vulnerable your personal brand is. So when I go, in my mobile app that will be coming on January 1st, called Smart Performance. The S starts for self-care, and in self-care module, you're going to be learning about your why, about habit building, about visualizing, but also about how to build your personal brand. And in there, I explained that your personal brand is just like a balloon, right? It is very fragile. Now, it can be beautiful, it can be bright, it can be speak for itself, it can be something that you're very proud of. but it takes a singular mistake to blow that up. So we have to be very mindful on how we represent our brand in every phase of life. So I'm here as the Dutch mentor today. That doesn't mean when I go to the grocery store, I cannot be the Dutch mentor, right? I need to be represented. When I'm online and making posts, I'm representing my brand, even if I'm acting as Walter Dusseldorp. And that's the thing that people need to remember. Now, brands also evolve, right? We have to continue to grow with the times and making sure that we continue to reflect back upon it. Do I need to make an adjustment to my brand? And that is something that people need to understand. So for me, and when I talk to people, is this: what is your true differentiating strength? Not, if you go to the resume, they will tell you right on the top quarter, 15 things they're good at. I said, well, I can blow you out of the water with 5 questions. Tell me what you're really good at. What is your true differentiating strength? Right. That's what you need to promote. You can be, if you're good at 15 things, you're good at nothing. Right. You're just like in generalist. So that is one. The second thing is that, what are your personal values? Right. For me, it's honesty, integrity, and pragmatism. I need to carry that through in everything that I do. Right. I cannot sway from that. And then it is about, who are you as a leader? How do you represent yourself? So I want to look at myself after deep reflection. I want to lead with confident humility, right? Like a situational or a servant type leader. Yes. And then what is the outward brand? What is something that represents me? And there you can develop sort of a logo. And then, of course, it comes down to the mission statement. How do I tie this together? So my tie together is that, listen, in just 15 minutes per day, you too can be the leader you always wanted to have, or the leader that your team needs to thrive under. It ties it all together: integrity, pragmatism, honesty, your servant leadership. It's working with a team. So getting people to bring that together and then learn to represent that in everything that they do will help them in their next interview. It will help them to lead with cause that can lead to a promotion.
Yeah, and you're the embodiment of it, right? Because if this is your brand, you live that brand. Everything that you do is on brand with that, right? And again, it's so easy to see those types of things happening. Like you said, one small thing can throw that off. And one of the things that kind of hits me, and I kind of want to get your opinion on this, the idea that, when we grew up, we understood certain things that, you don't share certain things. You don't talk, if you're in business, you don't talk politics in business because you alienate 50% of the people. And now what we see with social media, we have people that are posting things online, and they can post wherever they want. I'm not saying that, but I think, especially from the younger generation's perspective, I think they're missing out on that understanding of whatever you're posting out there, whatever message you're saying, even if you're not posting as a business person, that still kind of carries over, and it does roll into who you are and into who your personal brand is.
So yes, and you have to be careful in everything you do. However, I don't promote outright stating what I believe in, yes or no, but I do believe that we all have a responsibility to ask good questions. And don't accept things just at the surface.
Instagram teen accounts have automatic protections for what teens see and who can contact them, plus time management tools. And Instagram will continue adding built-in safety features to help create age-appropriate experiences. Learn more about teen accounts and Instagram's ongoing work to protect teens online at instagram.com/teenaccounts.
But what this country is missing, what we are missing at work, is dialogue. And dialogue does not to be, not have the same opinions around the table. We need to have discourse, civil discourse. That's where true innovation comes from. That's where true advancement comes from. That's where when I say something on Facebook or Instagram or whatever else to somebody, it's not to tell them that they're wrong. I'm challenging them to think differently, to have a dialogue about a topic rather than just say the words that somebody else already has spoken. And that is something we need to do more of, because that will make us collectively better. Listen, we need to have two sides, or prefer 3 or 4 sides of the story, be represented, especially in politics. So, but that's how we advance, right? So we cannot hide from that. So one of the things we see a lot now, especially with senior leaders have real opinions, but they have nowhere to go with it, right? So I would recommend that every senior leader should have a person like myself that they hire, that they speak with on a weekly basis, and at least decompress to that person and says whatever needs to be said in a very safe environment. So at least they get it off their chest. And it is another factor that if you don't do that, it leads to quicker burnout.
Yeah, burnout, yeah. Easy, yeah, because you internalize everything. And like you said, there is no outlet. I think, just to take that a step further, for at least for me, surround yourself with people who aren't yes people, that are going to
very important.
Not necessarily give pushback for pushback's sake, but give pushback where pushback is needed and deserved. If you walk into a room with an idea and you got 10 people in the room and you walk out with that exact same idea, that idea is probably not going to work. Right?
Group thinking is dangerous, Tim.
Yeah, very dangerous.
I always bring up, look at the challenge in 1986 when it exploded with the first teacher on board. Listen, that was a preventable accident. If the group thinking set in, and the culture of excellence had failed because they did not allow everybody, or made everybody feel comfortable enough to speak up. There were actually people in the room who knew that the O-ring that ended up failing was a vulnerability on that particular flight, and they did not feel comfortable to speak up. And because of that, I think 6 or 7 people died. Right, and that will be seared into our memories. It happened to be the day before my birthday when it happened in 1986. So, and we'll watch it live on television, right? 93 seconds. We will never forget these things. Again, group thinking brought down a challenger. Group thinking brings down a lot of companies. Right? Look at Blockbuster Video. Right? It is people who sit around the table agreeing with each other all day, every day. How great they were, how many stores they had, how great their VCRs and CDs were. In the meantime, Netflix sat in a basement office or in a garage, re-engineering the wheel and coming up with streaming services and direct delivery to the house. And before you knew it, Blockbuster was closing stores quick, and Netflix could build new stores and new streaming pathways. Yeah. Right? And all that happened is because a bunch of people sat around the table agreeing with each other rather than somebody said, hey, listen, guys, we need to think differently. And that is a really important message for every single person. In healthcare, for example, we would need desperately go from sick care, the system we have today, to well care. Well, we need to stop talking about it and start doing something about it.
Start doing it, right?
And that is problematic because the money is made on the sick side, but we can bear the cost on the sick side. We have to prevent illness, right? We have to prevent it from the day people go to school. Physicals, dental care, pediatric care, vitamins, access to safe foods, everything, right? Is it exercise, prevention of diabetes and hypertension and obesity and asthma, environmental diseases. All these things that happen in the adolescent years are triggers to sick care as they become young adults and adults.
Exactly.
At exceptionally high costs.
We could go down that path and talk about that forever. But the principle's still the same, right? You've got to have get away from the group thinking and get new ideas. And this is, I may be in the minority on this, but I think Gen Z and the younger generations, and I talk about this a lot. To me, they're the smartest and most entrepreneurial generation that I've ever taught. And I think a lot of times the older generations just really kind of discounts some of those characteristics, and so sometimes for good reason because they can't communicate. But I think we need to reach out to them and listen to their ideas and listen to what they have, because it could be some of those things that kind of change the way we go about doing things, change some of the processes. But their problem is they don't know how to communicate. And if you can't communicate, it doesn't really matter how much you know. Your ideas are never going to go anywhere.
So I'm going to push back on that a little bit for you, Tim. So
Sure.
again, that statement is an old statement because we expect them to communicate the way we communicate.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
All right. What we need to do is stop doing that. We need to learn to communicate the way they communicate.
They do.
So,
Yes.
for example, right, I have a 19-year-old daughter. Actually, it's her birthday today. Happy birthday!
Happy birthday.
Maya. It is. If you look at their text, it's like code. It's a bunch of emojis and all kinds of different things that the language that you and I don't speak, but they say more than we would say in a whole paragraph or a short story. So we need to adapt to the way they see the world. We need to adapt to the way they learn. We need to adapt to the way they communicate while still sharing our experiences with them, and how they can take that into consideration as they develop their path forward into whatever it is that they need to and want to do. So, for example, any person of a Gen X or maybe a little bit younger than that, who is not every day using or trying to have a deeper understanding of AI, will be left behind.
Behind, yes.
Period. And that's not a question, right? So
It's happening.
Right. It's happened right in front of us. Right. And then people say, well, AI is new. So no, AI is not new. AI has been around for 30 years. We just didn't know how to use it, and we didn't know how to connect it to computers. But the new generation, right, the Zs, or the Ys, or whatever it is, the millennials, they have figured it out, how to put it all together and put it on steroids and make it. And just think about that. If that happened over the last 2 years, just imagine what that is going to look like in the next 2 years.
Right.
And that's the thing that we need to make sure that we are not left behind, and that we are part of the conversation. Therefore, we cannot expect them to speak our language. We need to learn to speak their language.
Walter, I don't know if you do this or not, but my kids are a little bit older, and I 100% agree with you. I am flying that flag. And a lot of times what I'll do is I'll look and see how they're talking, what the language they're using, this, that, and the other thing. My kids are older. I've got grandkids now, and I'll talk to my kids in language like, people younger than them talk, and they get upset. I said, well, number one, you better learn this. You better understand, and you better adopt that mindset, because number one, now you have kids, and they're also in the point in their careers where they're starting to become leaders themselves, and just trying to teach them that you have to do that. You have to be able to reach out to them. You can't expect, you as a leader cannot expect them to always reach out to you. You as a leader, your responsibility is to reach out to them and get them on board and bring them along and bring them up to speed. That's your responsibility.
Yeah, listen, we are here to encourage, to remove barriers, to give them perspective. But we should certainly not stand in the way on their way of doing it. And again, the best experience is something that they have experienced the hard way, and by falling down from time to time.
Yeah, and that kind of leads me into the, we talked about it a little bit already, but why? Understanding their why, and as a leader, you have, number one, you have to know what your why is, but you also have to understand what their why is, and how we go about it, and what our values are in terms of work and work-life balance and those types of things are very different. But we also have to understand what their why is, so that we can, really understand and help them. It's not that they don't want it. They just want it a different way, or they want it for different reasons. Just like you and I may, we may have the same work ethic, but our why may be a little bit different. So that's also part of leadership. So how do you help them to determine what their why is, or get to that point, get zero down and nail down what that why is, because that's so important.
Yeah. So first of all, I ingrain into them right out of the gate that leading with the why is the key to success. Right? Is that if you really can articulate the why, it's so much easier for people to buy into it. Right? And if people buy into it, it lowers the resistance to change, and therefore success and performance will come much sooner. So how do I start? I always start with inward looking and ask them, so what is your why? Why do you do what you do? And I tell you that 98% of the people don't really understand either the question, or certainly cannot articulate their why in a cohesive and concise manner. So, for example, if somebody says, you go to an interview and somebody says to you, so tell me a little bit about yourself, right? That's a why question. So people go on a 5-minute tirade that makes no sense whatsoever, is not connected, and certainly not memorable. What you just did made a really bad first impression. And by the way, if you don't get invited back for your second or third interview, that's the reason why, because you lost them in the first 5 minutes. Yeah. I try to impress upon them that they should have well rehearsed to the point that comes from your heart, not from your brain, on what your why is. And the why has 3 components. It needs to have a hook. You need to grab my attention within the first 8 to 9 seconds. There's a little part of our brain, sits right here on the side. That is our filter. If it is of interest to us, we will continue to listen. If we're not, we push it away. Or we're no longer really deeply listening, absorbing the information. Precisely the reason why videos that go viral on social media or advertisements on television, it's all about the first 8 seconds. Because if we don't watch the first 8 seconds and you grab the attention, we are lost. We just move on to the next, right? So that's where it starts. Then I need to have some part of the body, and I want you to close it. Right? So, for example, if I say, what is my why? Listen, I can say, as a 14-year-old, I was riding my bicycle in Holland, and I saw this farmer get hit by a car. And I was, I held him in my arm as he was dying, 8 seconds. Now, most people say, interesting. Give me a little bit more of this. Like, what happened to this guy? I said, right at that moment in the middle of the street, I had an epiphany that I will never be in a position again that I cannot help somebody. I knew right then and there that I needed to go into medicine. And every step I took from that point forward, as I left that accident scene and washed the blood off my hands and my clothing, I've taken to become a care provider. And as my career advanced, I learned that I could not only care for one-to-one, but as a leader, I could care for other leaders who take care of thousands of people and making a difference in patient and health outcomes. So now that is memorable, right? That is something that is connected. That's a story. That's 45 seconds or less. And that's the thing that I try to teach people, is that you need to come up with something that is uniquely yours. Because the thing is that a differentiator is key, right? Why, how am I going to be standing out against 20 people? If I go in there and tell them that I will be doing, we do that, or we do, well, you sound like everybody else. So I'll give you one more example. So as a young person, but this really could be for anybody, as an entry-level person, you go into any shop, let's say you go into Starbucks, or you go to a local farm, and you apply for a job, and the person says something to you, and you say, I need you to know that I will be here 10 minutes early. You will never catch me on my telephone. I will work until the last minute of that shift, and I'll always ask you if there's something else that I can do. And if nobody wants to do it, I'll do it for you.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. Stop waiting around for the perfect candidate. Instead, use Indeed sponsored jobs to find the right people with the right skills fast. It's a simple way to make sure your listing is the first candidates see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs have 4 times more applicants than non-sponsored jobs. So go build your dream team today with Indeed. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Right. Again, it's a bit of a why of showing who I am as a person. How are you going to say no to that person?
Right, exactly.
Right? I mean, that person at least deserves a shot at an entry-level job, as long as they carry through on the things that they say. That's very different than coming in and say, well, I'll be there. I'm a good reader. I'm a quick study. I'll do precise work. I'll ask some questions. Right? It is the differentiator that needs to pop up in your why statement. Now, that's the why about you. But there's whys when you go into everything else you do, trying to sell. Right? Is that leading with the why, explaining why it is important, is critically important, because people can buy into it. And if people buy into it, as I said before, the resistance to change is lowered. Therefore, performance comes sooner.
I love that explanation, and in that, and I hope the audience hears this. As you tell the why, you're actually telling an impactful, meaningful, heartfelt story. So it's not a 1 or 2 word answer, and it's telling something that's very personal to you, that like you said, is impactful and is going to be memorable. Walter's name is going to be at the top of the list, when it comes time to make those hiring decisions. So like I said, we may have interviewed 5 or 10 people over the last 2 weeks, and you know what? That second guy that came in, Walter, that story, it's been sticking with me. We need to get him in here. His passion, his story, those types of things are, like you said, are the separators, and.
Yep.
And also, like you said, that's so important. It's not rehearsed; it's your story, but you have to practice it. You have to actually say it so that it becomes, even though it's your story, it becomes second nature, so that it does become impactful. It's not, you can't just make it up on.
You don't feel like I'm reading off a sheet of paper, right? Because then
Right.
there's no empathy, there's no feeling to
Right.
it.
Right. And it's so important. And again, I think that's also. Well, really, every generation, I think it needs to do that a little bit more, but especially the younger generations understand that the preparation that has to go into doing things and doing things well, and which also develops habit, which also develops lifelong skills. But practicing in that preparation is the key to get to that point. You can't just walk in the day of the interview or the day of the presentation or whatever it is that you're going into and expect that it's going to happen, and it's going to happen at that high level that's going to separate yourself.
Yep, absolutely. It is something you need to carry through in everything that you do, period.
Yeah. So tell me about your Pure Leadership Power Program. What's at its core? What are the steps, and how do you see the communication fitting into each one?
So I always say to my mentees that, listen, the 3 most likely, or the 3 likely reasons why we fail is the failure to communicate, and failure to communicate. So communication is everything in everything that we do. So Pure Leadership Power is 1, 2, 3. 1 is always about yourself, really deeply understanding who you are as a leader, all the things we just talked about. And then it is coupling to the responsibilities of a leader. That's more outward. Love those you lead through context and not control, making sure that you build and support a psychological, physical, safe environment where people can excel, learning to work with great focus, how to motivate with fierce resolve, how to build meaningful partnerships. And it's a combination of those factors together will set you up for success as long as you practice and measure that on a daily basis. And then it is about shifting to learning to be an adaptive learner, meaning that you need to learn to solve problems at root causes. So I teach Lean Six Sigma, I teach an A3 methodology, and getting the people to understand the value of taking the time to solve a problem at the root cause rather than putting another Band-Aid on it, which is the standard in most industries. But that happens, it's recurrent over and over, go back to the same thing. We don't want that. It costs too much money, too much energy, lots of waste involved. And then the third part is about how can I now put it into a team format that the team can thrive. So you have learned to be that leader that everybody wants, that your team can thrive under. Now you need to assess every day, do I have the right people in the right roles? Are we truly unified in our actions? Do we have meaningful measures? Is there a cadence of accountability? And are we taking actions? So that is the program that I work with people for a 6-month period of time, a 12-month period of time on a personal level. There's an accelerator program that I just developed. It's called the Smart Performance mobile app, which will coming out on the Apple Store and Google Store come January 1st. I have 20 people enrolled in the test program right now and getting great reviews. Again, this is set up for you to interact with for 15 minutes a day. They're personal measures that you can hold yourself accountable to. You can teach yourself how difficult that really is. Yeah. And only once you get that, you can now speak about that. So this is a tool that you can use in order to be able to set yourself up for a successful interview, set yourself up for higher level leadership capabilities, how to drive performance, how to build success, and take this on a journey wherever you are, to wherever it is that you want to go. And the SMART stands for self-care, S. It is about mindful growth. It's about adaptive learning. It's about setting that rhythmic operation. That's the Pure Leadership Power 1, 2, 3. And then it's about developing this thriving community around performance. And the performance has 6 elements to it. It's always about safety, quality, growth, cost, transformation, and continuous development, which is that growth mindset. The combination of those things, if you do them well, 15 minutes per day, build these atomical habits, you too can become that leader you want to be, and certainly the leader that your team needs to thrive under.
And the app goes live January 1st?
The app comes live on January 1st. Anybody listening to it today, if you're interested, you can just reach out to me at thedutchmentor@gmail.com. I'm happy to enroll some more founding members today at 50% reduction in cost. And it will come initially as the founding members get some one-to-one coaching with that. Mm-hmm. In the regular program, this will be an add-on. If people want to have mentorship with it, that's great, and it's highly advisable. But it is set up that people can do it as an independent study too, as long as they dedicate 15 minutes a day on the app, continue to build these blocks and take action, right? It is not something that, it's not another fad diet that if you follow this for 2 weeks, you're going to lose 40 pounds. This is a mentor in your pocket. You can have all these things at your, within one click. But the thing is, it's you taking action. So you're learning to adjust your behaviors, to do things on a daily basis, rather than whenever, something happens is where the differential comes in.
That's amazing. And thank you for doing that. Where else can people connect with you to find out what you're doing and work with you?
Yeah, I would listen. Anybody is more than welcome to join me on LinkedIn. I have about 17,000 people on my LinkedIn account. Again, not for me, but it's a network that is there for all of you to be part of. I post 2 to 3 times a day outwardly, so these are not advertisements for my business, but talking about relevant topics. Love to talk about John Maxwell, Gary Vee, Tony Robbins, Brene Brown, and people, other leaders in the industry. I share, we'll hold polls, we have discussions. And of course, you can find me on Instagram and YouTube channel where I post on a daily basis, small 30-second to 1-minute leadership tips and insights. And of course, all my podcasts that I host on the Smart Performance Podcast can all be found there as well.
Well, Walter, thank you so much for joining us today. You provided a ton of value to the listeners, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. So thank you so much.
Tim, thank you very much for the invitation. It was really a lot of fun. And again, people are always free to come and book a free strategy call with me at thedutchmentor.com. Be happy to chat and give some directional advice, and I enjoy having a good conversation. And again, I appreciate your time and inviting me today.
No worries, bud. Take care, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, sir.
Be sure to visit speakingwithconfidencepodcast.com to get your free ebook, Top 21 Challenges for Public Speakers and How to Overcome Them. You can also register for the Formula for Public Speaking course. Always remember, your voice has the power to change the world. We'll talk to you next time. Take care.